Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm so welcome. I'm so excited. I'm so welcome. Wow. I'm so excited to be welcomed on this podcast and share with you in this really specific way about how human design and intimacy can kind of coexist in the conversation we can have between it. So, if you've never heard of human design, it is a combination between ancient systems and modern science. So, the ancient systems are the Chinese I Ching, the chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, and astrology. And the modern science is the quantum physics, the genetics, and the biochemistry. So, all of those systems combined to give us this beautiful energetic blueprint of how we are energetically wired to interact with the world around us. And we love to call human design an experiment, right? So, it's like a way in which we can leverage and use our energy to move through the world with the most ease and flow and out of resistance. So it's not a belief system, it's not a psychic reading, it's not going to tell you what job you should do, it's not a personality assessment because we're not using our minds to answer a series of questions. It's based on your time and place of birth. So that's in a nutshell what human design is. Yeah. There are four aura types, but we talk about them in five types. So yes. Yes, and yes. So there's over 2 billion configurations of human design, but at the very highest level, we talk about the five types. So the five types are the projectors, who are the leaders and the guides. They're here to lead other guides, other people's energies. And when we're in alignment, we're feeling a deep feeling of success. And when we're out of alignment, we're going to feel really bitter or annoyed. And Jordan and I are both beautiful, amazing projectors, part of the 20% of the population. So leaders, guys, what's up? And then we have our generators and manifesting generators, which make up about the 70% of the population. And these are people who are here to be creative. They wake up with a full tank of gas every day, and they're here to use it into gas, meaning energy, right? And they're here to use it in really satisfying ways throughout the day and go to bed delightfully exhausted. When they're in alignment, they're going to feel this deep feeling of satisfaction. And when they're out of alignment, they're going to feel really frustrated. So the generators and the manifesting generators and human design for business, we usually call these like the builders and the express builders for the manifesting generators. And there's just so much creative life force energy to build, to create, to do. There's a lot of also consistent sexual energy there. So that's super fun because we're going to be talking about intimacy today. So it's something to keep in mind. And then we have our manifestors, which are about 9% of the population, and they are deeply impactful and forceful energies. They are here to initiate, they're here to get things started, they're here to inform you what's up, they're here to tell you what's going on and get the ball rolling. For the rest of us, when they're in alignment, they're going to feel this deep sense of peace, and when they're out of alignment, they are going to feel really angry or pissed off. So that's the manifestors. And then reflectors is about 1% of the population, and they have a completely open white. So if you've ever looked at a body graph, which is the representation of human design, the body shape that has all the shapes within it, it's all white for them, meaning that they are taking in energy from all around them and they're reflecting it back. So they're really like a mirror for who they're around, the environments that they're in. And when they're in alignment, they have this surprise and delight. And when they're out of alignment, they feel really disappointed. And they're about 1% of the population. So that's the five types. Quick. We did a quick overview. Great. Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's such a beautiful experiment, right? And that's one of the things that I love about the system is hey, don't take my word for it. We call it an experiment. Go play with it yourself. Follow your type, follow your strategy, follow your authority, and see how you feel, right? And if it doesn't support you, if it's not the thing that you're looking for or that you're desiring and you don't love the way you feel after you've been experimenting with it, okay, drop it. But I've never had anyone tell me that that's the case. So If somebody Yeah. So if you're like, what the heck are these 5 types? Okay, cool. What's human design? What's this body graph you're talking about? How do I find mine? Beautiful, brilliant. You're in the exact right spot. So you're going to go to mybodygraph.com. It's not my website, but they do ask you for an email address. They've never, and once in the history of me having an account for years and years and years, have emailed me. So it's just so that you can log back in and like look at your charts. You don't have to pull it over and over again. Um, and you'll enter in your place, state, time of birth with your name. The name doesn't really matter because a lot of people ask me, do you need to, like, if I'm married, do I put my maiden name? It doesn't really matter. The name doesn't impact the chart. And then it'll pull up this thing that looks like the kind of like a preschool drawing assignment and kind of like a medical chart. And just navigate on over to the info tab and you're going to see one of those 5 words: projector, manifestor, reflector, generator, or manifesting generator. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when right before we started recording, I was like, "Okay, Jordan, I know you sent that question over," and I'm like, this is the juicy one because like intimacy can be interpreted as a lot of different things. So I'm curious the way that you see the world as a projector because you're here to see, and this is a system that you're mastering. Like, what does intimacy mean to you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ooh, fun. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there's a couple of different avenues that my like mind kind of went down when I like read the word intimacy. I was like, okay, we can go a couple of different places here. One is like into me I see, which is like into me intimacy, like that's the, like my version of intimacy, like how deeply do you see me, which is like such a projector thing to like think about when you think about intimacy, like see me, recognize me, right? Um but that on that level, it's almost like to me being intimate with your human design is like such a beautiful gift of like deeply seeing into yourself and giving yourself the gift of seeing how brilliantly and beautifully you are designed. And also, it's like a beautiful map and key to shadow work to be able to work with those sorts of things. And like, so that was like the first place my brain went. And I was like, okay, I know that's not what Jordan's talking about, but that's what that's what I'm gonna play with first. And then the second one was really kind of tactical and practical within the human design chart, because within the human design chart there is a channel or a strength within the design that's like the channel of intimacy. It's the strength of intimacy, which is gate 59 and gate 6 combined, and that creates the channel of intimacy. So gate 59 is really all around like sexuality and intimacy, and it corresponds to the sexual power of the sacral center. It's like the drive to reproduce and to experience intimacy in like romantic and platonic relationships. And then gate 6, which is like friction and intimacy, and that's really like it controls emotions and reproduction and like governs when we're open or closed to intimacy, like both in platonic and romantic partnerships. And so together those form the channel of intimacy, which is from the emotional center to the sacral center. So the emotional center, obviously all about emotions, like how you're actually feeling about that, and that friction gate is that gate 6 that comes off of that emotional center. And then for the sacral center, gate 59 being like the sacral center is all about life force energy. It's the energy to like generate and create and be like sexual, right? And so you're going to have that consistent access if you have that full channel, because you're going to either be a generator or a manifesting generator. A projector, a manifester, or a reflector is going to have an undefined sacral center. So we're going to have inconsistent access to that sexual energy. That doesn't mean it's not as much as, it means inconsistent, right? So we don't wake up every day with like the same amount. It's like we are actually here to be wise around sexuality. If we're an undefined sacral center, it's one of our wisdom potentials, but it also can be one of our greatest shadows, which looks like overcompensating or like feeling like you have to or not creating any boundaries around it. I'm going to pause there and like let you speak because I feel like I just went down a total tangent. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, because anywhere we have an undefined or open or white center in our body graph, that's where we're taking energy in from the outside world and we're amplifying it. So you actually might notice, like, if your partner has a defined sacral center, you might be like more turned on than they are because you're like taking in that like their level two, and it's like a 10 for you. But like, do you know what I mean? And also you're having that inconsistent feeling where it's like you don't want to necessarily every time they do. So it's inconsistent. You're taking in the outside world and you're amplifying it, and you have those shadow side as well as the wisdom potential. All of that can all coexist in an undefined center. Whereas when you have a defined center, or it's colored in or consistent for you, you're generating that energy within your body and you're pushing it out into the world. You're responsible for it and you have consistent access to that energy. So that's really where I look at like the way that sex and intimacy shows up within the chart. Um, is that sacral center, which, so the bottom, the second square up from the bottom, if it's red for you, it's defined, you are a generator or a manifesting generator, you have consistent access to it. If you're a manifestor, reflector, or projector, you have that undefined and you have inconsistent access to it. Again, not good, bad, right, wrong. It's like looking at the breadth of shadow to wisdom. So that's like a lot of these are like mental questions. So like, I mean, technically, sure, but like human design is very much like a body-based system. So to me, it's like there's a better intimacy coach for you, right? Because you're going to follow your human design authority and you're going to know from a body-based decision making strategy who is correct for you, who's on your fractal line is like what we like to say in human design, and who you're actually meant to learn from. Like if someone is a yes for you, they are correct for you. Like you are there to learn a lesson from them, which I really love. But and it's really fun to look at where do people have their wisdom potential if you're in a coaching relationship, right? Because what we look at for undefined centers is where have you kind of already been through it and can lead and guide someone who's behind you, like who's a couple steps behind you, and that could be like a beautiful place and space to leverage your open centers, so like an undefined sacral. Whereas if you're teaching something like maybe like step by step something, that might be more beneficial to do from a defined sacral center, like a defined center, because you're like, it's really consistent. You have access to it. Like, you know how it works, right? So it's just like the different flavorings of it and what you're looking to gain from a coach. So I loved and hated that question. Right. Love. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because you're a mental projector, right? Yeah. So you have no definition below the throat is basically the technical definition of a mental projector. And so one of the major things with that is like you having this undefined G center. And the undefined G center is basically saying like who you're around is really important and the place that you're in is really important. So noticing how do you actually feel in your body around your intimate partner, around your connections, around your like relationships, like that's super powerful for you. And that undefined sacral, same sort of thing, conversation we were just talking about, right? Like you're not an individual piece of your design, you're the whole thing, you're the quantum. um, and but to like look at those pieces and be like, ooh, you're feeling really deeply successful, for example, as a projector, like, you know, you're in the right place if your body feels successful. So fun. Oh, fractal lines. Yeah. 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 So this is really fun. Like the way that we talk about fractal lines is like in the human design system is like think about things fracturing, right? So when things fracture, they're all in little pieces. And so when you're like when things are in little pieces and you want to put them back together again, what do you have to do? You have to like find the little pieces and like put them back together again. And so you'll notice like when you're just like going through life that you're really like naturally drawn and attracted to certain people. And so when we say in design, it's like, oh, they must be on your fractal line. They must be a part of that little piece, like during the Big Bang, where everyone fractaled. Like we're not just one anymore. We are little pieces and parts and reflections of each other. Like you find your fractal and you work with people that are on your fractal. And the way that you find your fractal and that you talk about or that you are attracted to people on your fractal is when people actually show up fully as themselves. Because when they're conditioned and not shining fully as who they actually are, we can't find you, which I think is like a whole conversation in relationship and business. Like it's just like be who you are, right? And like decondition, which you can do through your human design chart. But anyway, when I say decondition, like for those of you who don't know what human design is yet or what that really means, it's like basically taking off the masks that you're wearing because you think that you need to be a certain way in order to gain love, acceptance, approval, validation, whatever that really looks like. And it usually comes from those undefined shadow parts of your design. But so for that, I would actually take in and look at the other piece of intimacy, which I like only got to two. I didn't even go down my third rabbit hole with that, but like that really brings us in here is like if intimacy is in connection, is in relationship with another, I would actually look at your connection chart with who you're with because this is going to take into account far more than just your type, but is really going to say, okay, hey, where do we have the four types of channels that you're going to see in a connection chart? Where do we see dominance channels? So dominance channels are where someone has a full strength, where someone only and the other person only has a gate. So you're going to find it's like kind of push pull energy with that, where it's like one person is like really taking control of, oh, I'm sorry, this is compromise channels where it's that push pull energy where it's like one person's really like got the whole thing and the other person kind of has to back off a little bit and you're kind of having to have those conversations around like, okay, well if you've got the whole 59-6, which is that intimacy channel, and I've only got the 59, maybe the other person's going to be initiating sex more often, right? Like those kinds of conversations that you get to have. Then we have the dominance channels, which I was talking about the connection before, or the compromise before, but dominance channels where you have the whole thing and your partner doesn't have any part of it. Like no gate is activated in that whole thing. So like you might be the one to like bring that energy to the relationship, to the table, and you're the one with the strength there, where the other person is like lets you do your thing in that area. For example, I've got the full channel of the 731, which is like leadership, planning, organization, like that kind of energy. And so like whenever my husband and I go on trips, it's like I'm the one doing that, and like he could, but like he has absolutely no interest and he's not very good at it. Like, right. And so it's just like so much easier for me to do it. I like doing it, right? Like those are sort of like roles that we can look at and kind of be comfortable with playing to our strengths within intimacy or relationships. And that can show up in a million different ways, right? And then we have friendship channels within a connection chart. And friendship channels is like, ooh, simpatico, right? Like you've got it and I've got it. Like we've got similar energy. We know what it's like to like kind of be in each other's shoes with like that. We both have the full channel. So if I'm at, for example, using that same channel, that 731, somebody else has it and we're both like, oh my gosh, we're the planners of our family, yeah, and like we could really like have really similar experiences and talk about what that's like for us. Same with the intimacy channel, right? If you have two people that have that, it's like, ooh, okay, like simpatico, right? Like you can talk about like that intimacy channel and what that looks like for you. um, and then the last one, which I think is the most fun to look at, and this is like really fun to play with, like in intimacy and sex and relationship conversations, is electromagnetic channels. And those are like, quote unquote, the attraction channels. So it's like you have one gate and the partner has the other gate, and you create a channel together. So you're like energetically attracted to each other because you quote unquote create that full channel of energy. So it's so fun to look at. I'm gonna stop talking now. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really fun too. Like the one of the places that I look to look in relationships of like two or more people is especially like that emotional center. Who has a defined emotional center in the relationship? Who's setting the emotional tone? Right. And really being able to look and say, do both of you have a defined emotional center? What do your waves look like when you're in a low or in a high, right? How can you support each other and be there for each other? Or how do you maybe need to take yourself out of the energy of the room if you're an undefined center and they're just like going through something that like doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you, right? And you don't have to fix it or make it mean something. So like that emotional center dynamic within relationships is so freaking powerful. There's so much, right? Like it's like, oh, welcome to like a new rabbit hole. And I'm like, okay. And then we could talk about like gate 59 and what line you have in gate 59, because like based on the line that you have, like it's going to be even more of an interesting kind of conversation. So it's just like, there's, oh my gosh, it's so fun. So like, because when it first came up, when you sent me like, well, let's talk about intimacy, I was like, oh, gate 59, right? Like that's what we talked about before. It's like achieving union, intimacy, like reproductive energy. But like the line, which is like point something. Do you have gate 59? I'm curious. Yeah, I'm like, I don't have your chart, so I don't know. I know you're not defined in your sacral center, but if you have gate 59 activated, if you have that trait or gate, um, what shows up is like a dot afterwards, and that's your line or like the expression of that gate, right? So 59, you can have lines 1 through 6, and 59.1 is really around like a pursuer pursued dynamic. 59.2 is around like shyness or boldness, like dynamic. Point 3 is bonds made and broken. 59.4 is around like being confident or not. 59.6 or 59.5 is like being the seducer or being seduced. And 59.6 is around like soulmate energy or not. Okay. Okay, so you have gate 6. You have gate 6 activated, but not gate 59. So you might have really powerful and intimate relationships with people who have gate 59, because it's like creating an electromagnetic channel of literally intimacy. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I need your birth certificate ASAP. Yeah. It's really fun. And like, yeah. 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 Yeah, like for example, like your all the arrows around your head, the variables, those will change minute by minute. So those are types of things like you don't want to look at your motivation and like things like that or your environment until you know the minute because it shifts and changes. Yeah. I do want to say just like briefly because we were talking about electromagnetic channels, and this especially is true for split definition. So if you're a split definition or a triple split definition, you'll notice that likely you're attracted to partners who bridge your split. So what I mean by that is like you have islands of energy within your chart. Um, and so like for example, my energy is split at gate 56. I can sail a boat between all the channels of my energy or all of the energy centers of my body graph except between the throat and ajna. And what is quote unquote missing. I don't love that language, but like the one I don't have consistent access to is gate 56. I just like that's not something that I was born with. And so I don't have consistent access to it. But my husband has gate 56. So he bridges my split. And I think what's really funny is like when you look at that, that creates an electromagnetic channel, like an attraction channel, but it's like an even like it's a power up almost of like, so now once I found that out in human design school, I was basically like, babe, I don't love you. It's just an electromagnetic attraction. I really do. It's fine. It's just a joke. But it's like you have no idea all the forces at play where it's like, when you like someone and you can't like describe it, you're like, I don't know, there's just something about them. It's like, well, what if your aura is doing the talking for you, right? So fun. Mm-hmm. Mm. You're taking it all in. Yeah, you're taking all of their energy in and amplifying it. Yeah, that's super fun. Yeah, I want to go because I know we've gone down like quite a rabbit hole. So if I'm gonna like bring it back up to like actually, okay, here, how can you play with it in a way that like feels good and is a fun experiment to play with? It's like, okay, what is your type? Like, are you a sacral being or a non-sacral being? Meaning, do you have that sacral center defined or undefined? And then looking at like, oh, okay, what is the shadow of this? Like, am I overgiving? Do I see the potential in all things? Am I not holding boundaries? Like those can be some shadows of the sacral center. Like, am I in a shadow or am I in a higher expression of this of the center? Which means like creative life force, you know, almost to the wisdom potential of being able to lead and guide and knowing when enough is enough. So like being able to look at that, I think is a really powerful place when you're talking about sex and intimacy. But in general, like being able to get into the body is the whole point of human design, right? Like our mind is the passenger and our body is our decision maker. Our body is like moving us through the world. It's like we get to rely on our body's wisdom, our subconscious. And so when we follow our type and our strategy and our authority, so whatever type you are, it comes with an associated strategy. And then your authority is your decision making strategy, and they're all body based. So really getting back in touch with the body and out of the mind of like thinking, oh, I think I need to do things this way, or I should go and have sex because we haven't done it in a while, right? Like that's all mind stuff that is not actually listening to your body. So, following the body's cues and what it desires, and being able to ask yourself, do I desire this right now? I think is really powerful. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And being able to really tap into like what, like when you're saying self intimacy, to me, like in a human design perspective, that's like, what does a yes feel like in your body? Do you know? Like, have you played with that? Because I think when I first found human design, I didn't know. It was very much, I was living in my head. It was a very mental game of life, of like strategic chess pieces versus like, what am I being called towards? What am I being like moved with, by? Like, right? It's like, where is my body trying to go versus let me like have my mind operate my body, and then my body's like flapping in the wind behind me like a meat suit, right? It's like really like integrating body, mind, and soul, and being able to like experiment with that and play with that. That's so fun. Oh, it's like, so I'm self-projected authority, so when I talk it out, like I feel my body change. It's like very expansive, like shoulders relaxed, like almost like my body is being pulled forward. It's like it's like it's an expansive yes, versus like I can tell just when I like talk things out, like, oh, that's a no, that's a no, that's a no. And I often like when in the very beginning of my experiment, and I'm still experimenting daily with this because it's a never ending experiment in my opinion. um but like I'll have my husband be like, okay, I need to talk something out, but can like I don't want your advice or opinion. Like I just want you to reflect back what you're hearing from me, because my voice shifts. Like other people can hear it and have said to me, oh, you're that's it. That's your true, like that's true for you. So like it's like what feels like me, which is, it's so fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's so fun. And especially for you when you're around different humans, right? It might shift and change with that undefined G center of like, oh, yes, sometimes feels like this, and maybe sometimes it feels like this. And like being able to play with, oh, it's in my chest. Okay, now it's moved, it's a little bit lower. Like you get to play with that. And isn't that such a fun, intimate game to play with yourself? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. This is funny because like I was one of those people that was like very triggered by this language of like listen to your body. I'm like, what the f does my body have to tell me? Like I am brilliant and I don't need any like organs telling me what to do, was kind of the vibe. And now I forgot the question. What was the question? I just really relate to that. The person who's like first coming into like, oh, my body actually has some power here. Yeah. Um, one, I hired a coach, Erin Nicole Porter. High five, shout out to Erin Nicole Coaching. And I got my NLP certification, and we like went deep down into like what does my body actually feel like. But I think like starting really simply with like what does my body feel like sitting on this chair? Not what do I think my body feels like, but okay, if I were gonna tap in like and just like feel into the energy of my foot on the floor, what does my foot on the floor feel like? What does the sensation of my foot on the floor feel like? And like starting there, rubbing your leg and be like, oh, not what do my fingertips feel like on my legs? What do my legs experience my fingertips feeling like? And being able to play with like different sensations that you've never really noticed, sat with, or paid attention to before. And like that was a really powerful first step for me. And I would invite you, if that sounds like a fun activity for you to do as well, like to play with getting in your body that way as well. Um, because it's been like a very long process for me. I was very like I disassociated a lot. I was not in my body. I was like purely like in my mind. And so this process of like coming back into my body, and my body actually is like a safe place to be, and like cultivating safety in my body. Oh my gosh, that's been so powerful. And so to go from this human design system, which was purely mental at first, to being like, oh no, this is what it's meant for. This is what it's meant to feel like, and it's in the body. It's like so powerful. I'm curious for you, like what does that look like for you getting in the body? Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. How do, I'm curious how meditation works for you with that defined ajna, like your mind going a million miles an hour. Yeah. 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 No control, no judgment. So powerful. Mm. Um, I have a like a kitten poster saying, like how they have those like cutie kitten posters, like that have like motivational quotes on it. If I could have one of them, it is, "You're designed for everything you're meant for in this life." And I mean that like wholeheartedly. Like I love to look at that of human design and our energy through the lens of nothing is wrong with you. And if we could step into the intimacy of who we actually are and accept ourselves without judgment, like what else could we possibly create? And so that's my kitten motivational poster quote for you that I'd want to leave anyone listening to this with. I'm most active on Instagram at Lauren E underscore, no, Lauren E Armstrong underscore. Um, and at laurenarmstrong.com. My website is currently getting a facelift. So if you're in the middle of the construction, come back and check it out later. But it's going to be beautiful. Projectors. Was that a leading question? You're like, oh yeah, talk about that. So yeah, it's really fun. I started out with like working with all of the types after going through the International Human Design School and going through their business consultancy program, so BG5 analyst. And I just found that like I was getting invitations after invitations from fellow projectors being like, how do I actually like work with my energy and build a business? So that is my primary jam. I love doing it. And it's really my experience. So it's all within my chart. I'm a reluctant leader and guide for fellow projectors, which shows up in my chart. It's like if you have to be convinced, that's a good sign for you. So, okay, cool. I was convinced. Um, and yeah, I'm here to chat. I'm here to talk. So I'm here talking. As you can tell, I took the mic from Jordan. Was like, let me tell you about all the things. So you can find me doing that on my Instagram. Because yes, and you invited me to share more about what I do, right? It's like it's so beautiful to be actually like recognized and invited for your work in the world. Thanks for having me. So fun. We got to go down some rabbit holes. That's great.